Hello, friends. The 1,002nd day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. One of the main events today is the strike on the Dnipro. Initially, the Ukrainian Air Force and Zelensky said that Russia used an intercontinental ballistic missile. However, later Western media, citing American officials, said that it was not an intercontinental missile, but a medium-range ballistic missile. Putin himself later confirmed this. He said that today Russia used its latest non-nuclear hypersonic medium-range missile system, HYPERSONIC, to strike the Dnipro. According to him, there are no air defense systems capable of shooting down such missiles. At the same time, judging by the video, the missile had separating warheads, like other missiles used as carriers for nuclear warheads, which significantly complicates their destruction by air defense systems. It is not yet known how many missiles of the HYPERSONIC system and similar ones Russia has. But if they are produced in sufficient numbers, this could seriously change the situation with missile strikes on Ukraine, sharply increasing the damage they cause. In addition, it becomes clear why a number of foreign embassies closed in Kiev yesterday and announced an increased risk to their employees, which did not happen during previous missile attacks. Ukraine's partners were probably afraid that the capital's air defense system might not shoot down the missile that was fired at Dnipro today. And, since Western systems currently form the basis of Ukraine's air defense, the use of the HYPERSONIC, which can also carry a nuclear charge, could be a signal to NATO countries that Russian missiles can penetrate their air defense system. In this regard, the question arises of how exactly Russia is prepared to respond to strikes by Western long-range missiles. Putin said the following in his statement on this matter: Russia considers itself entitled to use weapons against targets in those countries that allow their weapons to be used against Russian targets. In the event of escalation, Russia will respond decisively and in kind. He also said that some doubt Russia's readiness for any development. Russia is ready to resolve disputes peacefully, but is ready for any development. If anyone doubts this, they are wrong. There will always be a response, Putin said. Let's try to figure out what these statements by Putin mean. I have already said in previous videos that the Kremlin has two strategies. The first is a quick and extremely tough response, including the use of nuclear weapons against Ukraine or even NATO countries. It is promoted by the Russian Party of Hawks. This party believes that the West will not want to start a nuclear war over Ukraine and will give up. Now this party is actively calling for the most severe response to long-range missile strikes, otherwise the West will stop taking any threats from Moscow seriously and will continue to raise the stakes. In addition, since 2022, the thesis has been pumped through Russian telegram channels that there is no need to put thousands of soldiers in the Donbas landings if it is possible to simply launch 2 or 3 nuclear strikes on Ukraine and force Kiev to capitulate, like the US did to Japan in 1945 after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But there are also opponents of a nuclear strike. They propose a different strategy of action. Their argument is the following: a strike with nuclear weapons on Ukraine could send Russia into international isolation due to the negative position of China and other countries of the global South. And a nuclear strike on NATO countries, or an ultimatum to the West with the threat of a nuclear strike, could lead to a global nuclear war and mutual destruction. They also believe that time is on Russia's side in the war, and their army holds the initiative at the front. Donald Trump's victory opens up prospects for ending the war in the near future on terms favorable to Moscow, and therefore it is not in the Kremlin's interest to take risky, abrupt steps that could radically change the situation, and not necessarily in Russia's favor. At the very least, it is not worth taking such steps while there is hope for agreements with Trump so as not to disrupt them. At the same time, such a non-nuclear strategy does not exclude the intensification of conventional strikes on Ukraine, in particular on nuclear power plant substations, in order to turn off the Ukrainian energy sector, which will be presented as a response to long-range strikes. It also does not exclude actions by Moscow hinting at the possibility of using nuclear weapons to strengthen the negotiating position for the future. The strike with the new missile on the Dnipro looks like one of such hints. Judging by Putin's speech, the Kremlin is still adhering to the second strategy, which does not provide for the use of nuclear weapons. He threatens to strike military facilities of NATO countries, but does not say when exactly and under what conditions they will be carried out. As if suspending the threat, he also announced a strike with a new missile on the Dnipro, which, according to Putin, no air defense system in the world can shoot down. At the same time, he makes it clear that this approach may change to a more rigid one. But he also does not name specific conditions for this. That is, for now, the strategy is, we threaten the West, but do not hit, and we hit Ukraine, but not with nuclear weapons. With the hint that this strategy may become tougher at any moment, depending on the actions of Ukraine and the West. One way or another, the coming months will be very dangerous. The influence of the hawkish parties is still very strong in Ukraine, the West, and Russia. Its task is to do everything to prevent the war from ending soon, the chances for which appeared after Trump's victory in the elections. And to do this, it will try to bring the escalation to such a level, by the time of the inauguration of the new U.S. president, that any agreements will become practically impossible. It has many ways to do this. For example, the crossing of new red lines by Ukraine and the West will strengthen the positions of those forces in Russia who advocate the harshest possible response. And it cannot be ruled out that in the near future, the Party of Hawks will try to further inflame the situation. Whether it will succeed is the main question now. At the front, Russian troops advanced in the pocket south of Kurakovy and reduced the distance on the flanks. Now there are just over 4 kilometers left until the closure of the cauldron, according to the map of the Deep State Telegram channel. In particular, the Russians advanced to the south of Dnipro, capturing this village and cutting the highway leading from Kurakovy to the south. A soldier of the armed forces of Ukraine, with the call sign Muchnoi, confirms the capture of Dnipro and the cutting of the highway, and reports on attempts to storm Uspannivka. If it is lost, it will be a cauldron, writes Muchnoi, and advises the fighters to leave there. Deep State also confirms the advance of Russian troops in Kurakovy, which was reported yesterday by Russian telegram channels, and showed a video with a flag. Judging by the map, the eastern half of the city is engulfed in fighting, while the Russians have already captured a significant part of it. Muchnoi also confirms fighting in the center of Kurakovy. The fighting is taking place for the central part. The enemy is hitting the area of the bus station and the market south of the elevator, the military man reports. On the southern front, an attempt by the Russians to encircle Velika Novosilka is visible. As the Deep State map shows, the Russian army has advanced west from Yasna Polyana towards Rozdolny. There is also an advance near Novodonetsky, directly towards Velika Novosilka. In the west, the attack is going through Rivnopol. So far, this area is far from being encircled. Muchnoi also writes about this plan of the Russians. He says that the Russian army, if it reaches the Mokry Yaly River, will be able to cut off the main supply road to Velika Novosilka. It is also possible to encircle the Ukrainian armed forces if the highway in the west, which is already under fire control, is cut off. Apparently, he means the Novosilka-Vremivka highway. The Ukrainian military also notes the difficult situation in Toretsk, in the Donetsk region. A lieutenant of the Ukrainian armed forces with the call sign Alex writes that over the past week, the Russian army has increased pressure on the flanks of Toretsk, especially in the Zabalka area, where the Russians, according to him, had relatively large successes and advances. Toretsk is also still difficult. The enemy has noted 2 key points of resistance where they are trying to hit, the Centralna mine and the Toretska mine, reports a soldier with the call sign Muchnoi. According to him, these areas are not being stormed yet, but it should be understood that the loss of these mines and waste heaps will have bad consequences for us both in defense and in subsequent control over the remains of the city. Serviceman Bonyatov also notes the difficult situation in Toretsk. He writes that the Russians are now throwing all their forces to take control of the high-rise buildings in the city center. This will provide them with fire control, a dominant position in aerial reconnaissance and strike drones, explains Bonyatov. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.